The Queen's loss. The galaxy was burning with war. Every star system carried scars of battles, and every planet knew the sound of fear. Among the powerful rulers of this galaxy was the alien queen, a tall figure with silver eyes that once shined with pride, but now carried shadows of sorrow. She ruled a mighty empire. Her people respected her strength, but even the strongest heart can break when it loses what it loves the most. The queen had a daughter, a child of light in a world of darkness. The young princess was kind, curious, and brave, often seen running through the palace halls with laughter that softened even the hardest warriors. For the queen, her daughter was more than an heir. She was hope, a reminder that peace might still return one day. But war does not care about hope. It only takes one fateful night. The empire faced an invasion. An enemy fleet, black as shadows, attacked the capital world. Explosions shook the skies, fire lit the horizon, and the palace walls trembled. The queen stood with her guards, ordering defenses, her heart steady as a commander but trembling as a mother. In the chaos, the unthinkable happened. The princess was taken. One moment she was in the safe chamber. The next she was gone. Stolen. By the enemy's hand, the queen searched every corridor, called every soldier, but her daughter's voice never answered. When the battle ended, the empire had survived, but the queen's heart was shattered. Her throne was no longer a seat of power. It became a prison of silence. Every morning she sat there, looking at the empty space beside her, remembering the days when her daughter smiled at her side. The people whispered. Some said the princess was dead, lost in the fire. Others claimed the enemy had taken her across the stars, keeping her as a hostage, or, worse. The queen heard these whispers but never showed her pain. She walked with her head high, her crown shining, but inside she carried a wound deeper than any blade could cut. Nights were the hardest. The queen would wander the empty halls of the palace, her hands brushing against the walls where her daughter once painted childish marks. She would stand by the window, staring at the stars, wondering if her daughter was looking at the same sky. She whispered promises to the wind. "I will find you, my child, I will bring you home." But as months turned to years, hope became a thin thread. The empire needed her strength, her people needed her voice. Yet the queen's heart beat only for the memory of her daughter. Still, she never gave up. She sent scouts across galaxies, spies into enemy lands, warriors into dangerous missions. Many never returned. Some brought back fragments, a cloth with the royal crest, a rumor of a girl held far away. But nothing was certain. Nothing gave her peace. The galaxy was wide, and the enemy was cruel. And slowly despair grew heavier inside her soul. Yet the queen was not only a mother, she was a leader. She knew that if she broke, the empire would fall. So she learned to hide her pain behind steel eyes. She sat in councils. She signed war orders. She gave speeches to her people. But every word she spoke was laced with an ache no one could heal. The world saw a queen, strong and unshaken, but in the silence of her chamber she was only a mother, broken and alone. One night a storm of fire crossed the skies as enemy ships attacked a nearby world. The queen stood at her balcony, watching the flames, and a thought pierced her heart. What if my daughter is out there suffering the same fire, the same fear? The image of her child crying, calling for her, tore at her soul. She gripped the railing with trembling hands, her silver eyes glowing with tears. But then she whispered again, the same promise, louder this time. "I will find you, no matter how many stars I must cross, no matter how many enemies I must face, I will not stop." That vow became her secret fire, though the world thought she was moving on. Though her court believed the princess was gone, the queen's heart refused to accept it. She knew, deep within, that her daughter still lived, and until she brought her back, she would never rest. But destiny moves in ways no one can predict. And soon an unexpected visitor would arrive at her court, a stranger who would change everything. A human warrior, carrying secrets of war and whispers of hope, and with him the queen's lost journey would begin again. A human appears. The queen's throne room was a place of silence. Once it had been filled with music, laughter, and the lively steps of her daughter. Now it echoed only with the sound of orders, reports of war, and the heavy footsteps of guards. The queen listened every day to her generals, to her advisors, to her spies, but never did she hear what her heart longed for. There was no news of the princess, no word of her fate, but fate has its own plans. On one cold morning, the palace gates opened for a stranger. He was not from the queen's empire, nor from any noble alien house. He was human, a lone warrior who had crossed galaxies to stand in her hall. The guards looked at him with suspicion, their weapons ready. No one trusted humans here, for their kind were rare in this part of the galaxy, often seen as mercenaries, wanderers, or troublemakers. Yet this one walked with calm steps, carrying, not arrogance, but determination. The queen raised her silver eyes and studied him from her throne. His armor was worn, scratched from countless battles, yet still strong. His face carried scars, but his gaze was steady, sharp, and fearless. When he knelt, he did not bow like a servant, but lowered himself as a warrior before another. "I bring words, not for your counsel, but for your heart," he said, his voice deep and rough. The hall froze in silence, for no one dared to speak to the queen in such a way. The queen's voice was cool and sharp. "You are bold, human. Few come here uninvited and live to tell the tale. Speak your words carefully, for my patience is thin." The warrior lifted his eyes, and in them burned a fire of truth. "I have seen the one you search for," he said. Whispers rushed through the hall. Guards shifted and advisors gasped. The queen's eyes narrowed, but her heart raced. Her voice trembled slightly, though she hid it well. "You claim much, human. Explain yourself." The warrior told his tale. He spoke of battlefields torn apart by fire and blood. He spoke of enemy camps where prisoners were kept. And then he described her, the lost princess. A young girl with silver eyes, chained but unbroken. Her voice weak but still full of defiance. The queen's hands tightened on her throne, her heart beating harder than it had in years, but doubt was her shield. "How do I know this is not a trick?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a blade. "Many have lied for rewards, many have spoken false hopes to earn favor. Why should I believe a human wanderer?" The warrior did not flinch. He placed his weapon on the ground, a gesture of trust. "I ask for no reward," he said. "I came because I too have lost, and I will not watch another mother suffer if I can help." The hall grew silent, heavy with unspoken thoughts. The queen's advisors whispered among themselves, warning her, urging her not to trust. But her heart, though wounded, felt a spark. It had not felt in years. A stranger had spoken of her daughter, not as a rumor, not as a guess, but as one who had seen, and though her mind told her to be cautious, her soul whispered that this might be real. Still, the queen was not foolish. "If you speak truth, then you will guide us to her," she said, her voice commanding. "If you lie, your life will pay the price." The warrior nodded without hesitation. "Then let my life be the proof of my words," he answered. That night the queen could not rest. She walked the palace halls as she had done for years, but this time her steps carried a strange energy. Could it be true? Could her daughter truly live? She stood by the great window and stared at the stars, the same stars she had begged for mercy. Now perhaps they had answered, but with hope came fear. For if her daughter lived, then she also suffered, and the queen could not bear to imagine the pain her child endured. In the shadows of her chamber, the queen whispered, "If you live, my daughter, I will find you. I will fight every empire, every enemy, every god if I must." And for the first time in many years her voice carried strength not only of a ruler, but of a mother rising again. The human warrior waited in the lower halls. He sharpened his blade, repaired his armor, and prepared for the mission ahead. He was a stranger in a strange world, yet something deep inside him stirred. For reasons he did not speak, he was bound to this quest as if it were his own. And though he had faced countless battles, something about this one felt different, heavier, more dangerous. He closed his eyes and whispered, "This time I will not fail." Far above, the queen stood once more on her throne, her heart torn between doubt and hope. The hall that had been filled only with silence now carried a new echo, the echo of destiny. For a human had come to her world, carrying not just words but a promise. And soon, her journey would begin again, a journey that would take her across stars, through fire and into the hands of fate itself. The Forbidden Mission. The Queen's court had not known such tension in many years. A human warrior stood in the center, a stranger among aliens, yet his words carried fire. He spoke of the lost princess, of chains and sorrow, and of a secret path into enemy territory. The Queen listened in silence, her silver eyes sharp, her heart beating with both hope and fear. If his story was true, then her daughter lived, but to reach her, they would have to walk through the darkest shadows of war. The hall erupted in voices. Advisors shouted warnings. Generals demanded proof. Priests whispered of omens. No one enters the enemy's core, world and returns. One elder cried. This is madness, a trap, a death road. Another hissed. But the Queen raised her hand, and silence fell. Her voice was cold, unshaken. If there is even a chance my daughter lives, then no wall, no army, no curse will stop me. The advisors lowered their heads, for they knew her word was law. The human warrior stepped forward. I know the path, he said, unrolling a map of star systems burned into metal. There is a corridor, a forgotten route once used by smugglers hidden from enemy patrols. It leads into the heart of their domain. The Queen studied the lines with steady eyes. It was not a safe route. It passed through dead worlds, asteroid fields, and old battle zones. It was a road of danger, but it was also a road of hope. At last, the Queen rose from her throne, her tall form casting a long shadow across the hall. We will go, she declared. Gasps filled the air, but none dared challenge her. She turned to her guards, selecting the finest among them, loyal warriors trained to die before they failed their queen. And then her eyes fell upon the human. You will guide us, but know this, if your tongue carries lies, your bones will never leave this galaxy. The warrior bowed his head, his voice steady. Then let truth be my shield. The preparations began at once. Ships were fueled, weapons polished, armor sealed. The Queen herself armed with her ancestral blade forged in the age of stars. The people watched from the city as the great fleet rose. Though few knew the true reason for this journey, rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the Queen hunted revenge. Others whispered of a sacred relic. None dared speak of the lost princess, for it was a wound too deep to touch. On the eve of departure, a shadow crept through the palace. In a quiet chamber, a cloaked figure sent a secret message across the stars. The Queen moves to reclaim what was lost, the traitor whispered. Prepare the trap. The message flew into enemy hands, and dark plans began to form. For even within the Queen's walls, betrayal had found a home. The fleet left the capital, slicing through space with engines of fire. The Queen stood on the bridge of her flagship, her gaze locked on the endless stars. Beside her, the human warrior stood silent, watching her with respect. Though alien to her world, his presence carried a strange weight, as if destiny itself had chosen him. The Queen wondered, not for the first time, why a human would risk everything for her child. But she did not ask, not yet, for the answer lay in the journey ahead. The secret route was harsh. Asteroids the size of cities drifted in silence. Broken remains of ancient wars, nebulas of fire threatened to swallow ships whole. The Queen's fleet moved carefully, guided by the human's hand. He seemed to know every shadow, every silent danger, as though he had walked this path before. Her warriors whispered of him. Some called him cursed, others called him blessed, but none denied his skill. Days turned into nights, nights into days. Though in space such things had no meaning, the Queen's heart grew heavier with each star passed. She dreamed of her daughter's face, of her voice calling out, and each time she awoke with fire in her chest, she did not rest, she did not falter. Her people saw their Queen as unbreakable, yet inside she was a mother chasing hope through endless void. Then, as the fleet crossed into a dark sector, the first danger struck. Enemy raiders appeared, their ships cloaked in shadows launching from the debris of ruined worlds. Lasers lit the void. Metal screamed, fire bloomed across the black. The Queen's warriors fought with fury, blades and cannons tearing through the attackers. The humans stood at the helm, guiding maneuvers that saved the flagship from certain doom. When the last enemy ship exploded into dust, the Queen turned to him, her silver eyes glowing. "You fight like one who has lost much," she said, her voice low. He answered only with silence, but in his eyes, she saw truth. That night, as the fleet drifted in silence, the Queen stood alone in her chamber. Her hand rested on her blade, her mind racing. Somewhere ahead lay her daughter, chained in enemy hands. But now she knew the path was not only dangerous from outside, there was betrayal within, shadows hiding in her own court. And as the stars burned outside her window, she whispered once more, "No matter the cost, I will find you." The human standing far below looked at the same stars and spoke softly, "This mission is more than hers. It is mine too." But his words were carried only by the silence of space, for secrets weighed heavy on his soul, secrets he had not yet revealed. And in those secrets lay the fate of the Queen, the princess, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Echoes of the daughter. The fleet sailed deeper into the enemy's shadow. Stars vanished behind black clouds of dust, and even the strongest hearts felt the weight of silence. The Queen stood on the bridge, her gaze steady, though her soul trembled with each passing moment. Beside her, the human warrior watched, his hand resting on the worn hilt of his blade. Every second brought them closer to danger, yet also closer to hope. The hidden route twisted through dead worlds. Planets shattered into pieces floated like ghosts, silent reminders of wars long past. Among the wreckage, the Queen's scouts found strange remains, abandoned camps, ruined ships, and burned symbols of the enemy. It was in these ruins that the first sign appeared, a small scrap of cloth torn and half burned, but not just any cloth. It bore the royal crest, the mark of her house. The Queen's hand shook as she lifted it, her silver eyes glistening. Her warriors knelt in silence, for they too recognized the sacred sign. The human warrior studied the cloth. "This is fresh," he said, his voice low. "Not from years ago, not from the first invasion. This was left not long ago." The Queen's heart beat faster, a storm of hope and fear rising inside her. Could it be true? Could her daughter still be alive, leaving traces like a whisper across the stars? Her voice trembled as she ordered, "Search everything. No shadow, no stone, no ruin must be left unseen." The search continued, and soon another clue was uncovered. A recording device, cracked but still alive with faint power. When activated, the chamber filled with a voice. It was soft, weak, but unmistakable. It was the princess. Her voice spoke of chains, of darkness, of waiting for rescue. The Queen's heart broke and healed at once. Tears burned her eyes, her hands clenched into fists. Her daughter had spoken, her daughter lived, but as the message played, it ended with something darker, a sound of footsteps, harsh voices, and then a scream cut short. The recording fell silent, leaving only the echo of pain. The Queen staggered back, her breath heavy. Her warriors lowered their heads, some in sorrow, others in anger. The hall filled with whispers. Was she alive when the message ended? The human warrior stepped forward, his voice strong. "She is alive," he said. "The enemy does not kill one they can break, and she is too valuable to them. They keep her for a reason." The Queen searched his face, and in his eyes she saw no lies, only fire. Her hope, though fragile, refused to die. She raised her blade and declared, "Then we will not stop, not until she is in my arms again." The journey pressed on, but the shadows deepened. Every star system felt colder, every silence heavier. And yet, signs continued to appear, as though the princess herself had left a trail. A broken chain in a forgotten cell, scratched with the mark of the royal crest, a hidden song recorded into a console, a lullaby the Queen had once sung. Every trace was like a voice calling across the void, whispering, "Mother, find me." But with hope came danger. Each clue led them closer not only to the princess, but also Into the jaws of the enemy, ambushes grew sharper, traps more cunning. The Queen's warriors bled. Ships were lost, but still they pushed forward, for every life lost. The Queen whispered their names into the silence, promising their sacrifice would not be in vain. Yet in the dark corners of her fleet, betrayal stirred. The cloaked traitor who had sent the message before now whispered again. The Queen hunts her daughter. She follows the trail. Prepare the prison, prepare the trap. The enemy listened, smiling in the shadows. For hope is powerful, but it can also be used as bait. One night, as the fleet drifted in silence, the Queen stood alone in her chamber holding the scrap of cloth. She pressed it to her heart, her tears falling onto the fabric. She remembered the sound of her daughter's laughter, the way she once ran into her arms, the way her little hands clung to her robes. Those memories burned like fire, but also kept her strong. "I will not lose you again," she whispered, her voice carrying like a vow into the stars. The human warrior far below sharpened his blade in silence. He thought of the recording, of the scream that had ended it. In his chest, old wounds reopened, memories of his own family lost to war. He whispered softly to himself, "This time, I will save her even if it costs me everything." The clues were real, the voice was real, but still the question haunted them. Was the princess truly alive, waiting in chains, or was every step leading them deeper into a trap set by the enemy? The Queen did not know, the warrior did not know, but both understood one truth. The journey could not be stopped now, for hope, once awakened, cannot be silenced. The enemy's trap. The Queen's fleet moved deeper into the black corridor of stars. Every trace of the princess filled their hearts with hope. But hope can be a dangerous fire, for what they did not know was that every clue, every scrap, every recording had been allowed. The enemy was watching, guiding them like prey into the jaws of a waiting beast. The human warrior felt the shift first. He stood at the bridge of the flagship, his scarred eyes scanning the maps. "The path is too clear," he said softly. "The enemy should have blocked us by now, but they have not. That means they are waiting." The Queen turned her silver, gazed toward him, her voice steady. "Do you suggest we turn back?" He shook his head. "No, if we turn back, we lose the trail. If we go forward, we walk into a trap, but perhaps sometimes a trap must be walked into, if it is the only way to find what we seek." The Queen's heart burned with both fear and fire. She knew the danger, but she also knew the voice of her daughter. The scrap of cloth the lullaby scratched into the walls. They could not all be false. Her daughter was out there, chained, waiting. So she raised her ancestral blade and declared, "Then we go forward, and if it is a trap, we shall break it." The fleet advanced, moving into a dark system where no star shined. It was there, among the silent asteroids, that the trap was sprung. Enemy ships burst from the shadows, black and sharp as daggers. Lasers cut through the void. Explosions tore through the silence. The Queen's warriors fought with fury there, ships burning bright in the endless night. But the enemy was too many and too prepared. One by one, her escorts fell, swallowed by fire. On the flagship, alarm screamed. The Queen stood tall on the bridge, her voice calm even as chaos roared. "Hold the line, protect the fleet." But even she knew the enemy had planned this too well. Her eyes flicked to the human warrior, who was already at the controls, guiding maneuvers with skill no alien could match. He cut paths through fire, dodged ambushes, and struck back with deadly precision. Her fleet survived longer than it should have, only because of him. But then came the cruelest blow. A message flashed onto the flagship's screen. It was her daughter's face, weak, pale, her eyes chained, with sorrow. "Mother," the voice whispered, "I am here. They are hurting me. Please, save me." The Queen's heart shattered, her silver eyes flooded with tears. Her warriors cried out, some with rage, others with despair. The Queen reached toward the screen, her hands trembling. But then the image flickered, and behind the princess appeared the enemy commander. A figure clad in dark armor, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Come for her, Queen, she is waiting, but every step you take will cost you blood." The screen went dark, leaving only silence. The Queen staggered back, her chest heavy with rage and sorrow. The human warrior's face hardened. That was no rescue call, he said, it was bait. But the Queen's voice cut through, steady as steel. Bait or not, I will not turn away from my daughter's cry. The battle raged, and slowly the Queen's fleet broke free, but the cost was heavy. Ships burned, warriors lost, blood spilled into the stars. Her throne ship carried scars across its hull. Her people looked to her for strength, and she gave it, though inside her heart bled. She walked the halls of the wounded flagship, touching the shoulders of dying warriors, whispering promises of vengeance. Each life lost carved itself into her soul. But as the fires cooled, another discovery was made. From the wreck of an enemy ship, her scouts recovered a map. It showed a prison hidden deep in enemy territory, and within it, the symbol of the royal crest. It was the place the princess had been held, the place from which the recording had been sent. The Queen's hands tightened around the map. Her voice trembled, yet carried the weight of command. This is where we go. This is where she waits. But in the shadows of her chamber, doubt whispered, was this prison real, or another trick, another chain of bait? Her heart screamed that her daughter lived, but her mind knew the enemy was cunning. Still, there was no turning back now, not for her, not for her people. Every ship that had burned, every warrior that had fallen, had done so for this mission. To stop now would mean their sacrifice was in vain. The human warrior stood before her, his armor cracked, his blade stained. You must know, Queen, he said, if this is a trap, it will be the deadliest yet. They will not let you leave alive. The Queen's eyes glowed with cold fire. Then let them try, for I will not stop until my daughter breathes free air again. In the quiet of space, the fleet reformed. Ships scarred, weapons low, but hearts burning brighter than before. They turned toward the prison marked on the map, and in the silence the Queen whispered, Daughter, I come. Hold on for me. Far away, in a chamber of shadows, the enemy commander watched. His armor gleamed in the cold light, his eyes full of cruel amusement. The Queen comes, he murmured. The human guides her. Good. Let them come closer. Let them bleed, and when they reach, I will break them both. The princess, chained in the darkness, lifted her head weakly, her lips whispering one word, Mother. The rescue, the prison world loomed ahead, hidden deep within the enemy's dark domain. It was a planet scarred by war, wrapped in storms of ash and fire, its surface dotted with black towers that reached into the sky like broken claws. Beneath those towers, in the deepest chambers, the princess was held, chained in shadows, her hope burning, weak but unbroken. The Queen's fleet arrived in silence, battered but determined, guided by the human warrior's steady hand. They had come too far, lost too much, and now the final test stood before them. The Queen stood on the bridge of her flagship, her silver eyes fixed on the prison world. Her blade rested at her side, glowing faintly with ancestral power. Her heart trembled, not with fear of death, but with fear of failure. For if she lost her daughter again, there would be nothing left of her, nothing but a broken shell. Beside her, the human warrior checked his weapons, his face calm, though his eyes carried storms. He had fought many battles, but this one felt different, heavier, like fate itself was watching. The plan was simple, yet dangerous. The fleet would create a distraction, striking the outer towers, while the Queen, the human, and her finest warriors would slip into the prison. It was a mission of shadows, a race against time. Once we enter, the human said, there will be no turning back. The Queen nodded, her voice steady. Then let us enter. For my daughter waits. The assault began. The fleet rained fire upon the towers, explosions lit the night skies, enemy defenses roared awake. But amid the chaos, a small strike ship slipped through, cloaked by shadows and smoke. Inside were the Queen, the human, and a hand-picked guard of loyal warriors. Their ship pierced the storm, landing deep within the prison's black walls. They stepped out into darkness, their armor shining faintly, their weapons ready. The prison was a labyrinth of iron and stone. The air was thick with ash, the walls marked with screams of those who had suffered. Every step echoed with danger, every corridor felt alive with unseen eyes. But the Queen walked forward with fire in her heart. Her blade drawn, the human guided them, moving swiftly, his instincts sharp. At times he seemed to know where the guards would appear before they even came. The Queen noticed, but she did not question, for his skill kept them alive. Then, in a chamber lit by faint red light, they found another sign. A chain broken, lying on the ground, scratched with the royal crest. The Queen knelt, her hand trembling as she touched it. Her daughter had been here, she had fought, she had left her mark. Hope surged through the Queen, stronger than ever before. Her warriors whispered prayers, their eyes burning with determination. But hope was quickly met with blood. An alarm screamed, and enemy soldiers poured into the corridors, their weapons glowing, their armor black as night. The Queen's warriors clashed with them, blades meeting blades, fire meeting fire. The Queen herself cut through them with her ancestral sword, each strike fueled by the fury of a mother's heart. The human fought beside her, fast and precise, every movement deadly. Together they carved a path through the storm of enemies, their bond of trust growing in the fire of battle. At last they reached the central chamber. Its gates were vast, covered in chains and guarded by steel beasts of war. The battle that followed shook the prison walls. Fire lit the skies. Screams echoed through the corridors. The Queen roared, like a storm, her blade breaking chains, her voice commanding her warriors to stand. The human charged forward, striking down enemies with brutal precision. And then at last, the gates broke. Inside, in the heart of the chamber, was the princess. She was chained to the wall, weak and pale, but her silver eyes still burned with life. "Mother," she whispered, her voice soft but clear. The Queen's heart shattered and healed at once. She ran forward, breaking the chains with her blade, pulling her daughter into her arms. Tears flowed down her face, falling onto her child's hair. "You are safe now," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You are safe." But even in that moment of joy, danger rose. The ground shook. The shadows grew darker, and from the far side of the chamber, the enemy commander stepped forth. Clad in black armor, his eyes cold, his blade burning with crimson fire. "You have come far, Queen," he said, his voice echoing, "but this is where your hope ends." The Queen turned, shielding her daughter with her body, her silver eyes blazing. Beside her, the human raised his weapon, his face hard as stone. The battle was not over, it was only beginning. For to leave the prison alive, they would have to defeat the commander. And in that moment, both the Queen and the human knew. This fight would decide not only the fate of the princess, but the fate of them all. The chamber shook with fire and fury. The Queen held her daughter close, shielding her with trembling arms, while the enemy commander stepped forward, his blade glowing with crimson flames. Behind him, the shadows of war filled the air, the sound of steel echoing like thunder. Her warriors formed a circle protecting their Queen and the princess, yet their eyes held fear. For this was no ordinary foe. This was the commander who had burned worlds and broken kings. The Queen rose slowly, placing her daughter gently into the arms of a guard. "Protect her with your life," she ordered, her voice steady though her heart trembled, her silver eyes locked on the commander, her ancestral blade burning with light. The human warrior stepped beside her, scarred hands gripping his weapon, his gaze unflinching. Together they faced the monster that had stolen her child. The commander laughed, his voice sharp as broken glass. "You think love makes you strong, Queen, but love is weakness. It makes you blind. It makes you bleed." The Queen's voice cut through his words like a storm. "No, love is what makes me unbreakable. Love is what will end you." The battle began. The commander's blade clashed against the Queen's. Sparks lit the chamber. Steel screamed. He struck with monstrous power, each blow heavy enough to shatter stone. But the Queen met him strike for strike, her fury rising with every swing. The human joined the fight, moving with speed and precision, his strikes cutting through the enemy's guard. For a moment it seemed two hearts beat as one, human and queen fighting side by side. The clash raged across the chamber, walls cracked, chains snapped, the very ground trembled under their fury. The queen's warriors shouted in support, but none dared step between the titans. This was a battle of destiny, a war fought not for crowns or empires, but for the soul of a child. The commander roared, striking the queen down onto her knees, his blade raised high. But before the final blow could fall, the human threw himself forward. Catching the strike with his own weapon, the force shook his body, blood spilling from his lips, but he stood firm. His eyes burned with pain, but also with fire. "I will not let another child be taken," he growled, his voice carrying the weight of a vow made long ago. The queen rose again, her strength renewed by his sacrifice. With a cry that shook the heavens, she drove her blade into the commander's chest. Light burst through the darkness, the crimson fire fading. The commander staggered, his voice choking on rage. And then he fell, his body crumbling into ash. The chamber fell silent save for the sound of the queen's heavy breaths. For a moment, time stood still. The queen turned, her silver eyes finding her daughter, still alive, still watching with tears in her eyes. The princess reached out weakly, whispering one word, "Mother." The queen dropped her blade, rushing to her child, pulling her into her arms once more. Tears flowed freely down her face, falling onto the princess's pale cheeks. "You are safe. My child, you are safe," she whispered, her voice breaking with love. Her warriors cheered, their voices echoing through the prison halls. The enemy fled, their spirits broken, their leader destroyed. The queen stood tall, her daughter in her arms, the human at her side. Together they walked out of the prison through fire and smoke, their path lit not by flames of war, but by the light of hope. When they returned to the fleet, the people wept with joy. The princess had returned, the lost heir of the empire had been found. The queen stood before her people, her daughter beside her, her voice carrying across the stars. "Hope lives," she declared. "Love wins, and no enemy can break the bond between mother and child." But in the silence that followed, her eyes turned toward the human warrior. He stood apart, quiet, his blade at his side, his face weary. The queen stepped down from her throne, her daughter watching with wide eyes. "Why did you risk everything?" she asked, her voice soft. The human's gaze dropped, his voice heavy with truth. "Because long ago I lost my own family to war. I swore no child should suffer as mine did, not while I still breathe." The queen's eyes softened, her heart stirred by his words. For the first time in many years, she saw not just a warrior, but a soul as broken and strong as her own. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice steady. "Then know this, human, you have not only saved my daughter, you have saved me, and you will never stand alone again." The people cheered, their voices rising like thunder. The fleet sailed home, carrying not only their queen and princess, but a new legend. The story of a human warrior who stood with a queen, who fought for love, who gave hope to a galaxy drowning in war. And in the halls of the palace, where once there had been only silence, laughter returned. The princess walked again through its corridors, her voice soft but strong. The queen watched her with pride, her heart finally healed. And in the shadows of the great hall, the human warrior stood, silent, scarred, but at peace. For he had kept his vow, and in doing so had found a place where he truly belonged. The galaxy had seen many battles, many victories, and many defeats, but none as powerful as this one. For this was not the victory of empires, but the victory of a mother's love, and that no enemy could ever destroy.